Hello and welcome to Accelerating RCS and Adapting to Omnichannel Approaches. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Rakuten Viber for sponsoring this session. If you are joining the session in person, please switch your phone to silent out of courtesy to the speakers and other audience members. If you would like to ask any questions to the speakers throughout the session, you can do so using the live chat function on the Swapcard app or on the desktop version. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our session moderator, Giovanni Bonini, who will introduce the panelists.
Thank you, Sophia, and welcome everybody to this exciting topic of smart messaging. What is smart messaging? Well, you guys know from voice that there's the term called POTS, plain old telephony service. And I would say smart messaging is everything beyond plain old SMS. So maybe we should phrase a new term, POSMS or something. Anyway, and RCS is just one of the topics which we're covering here. And I'm super happy to be joined by very, very seasoned and experienced experts of this subject. And I'd like to welcome John. Maybe you can say a few words, John.
Yeah, just to introduce myself, John Campbell from Cinch. I look after our product line called conversational messaging, or PO SMS, if you like. So everything beyond SMS and MMS. So RCS, Viber, WhatsApp, and all the favorite channels.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. You are the man exactly for this topic. So, Mattia, what about you? What are you responsible for? Please introduce yourself.
So my name is Mattia Razem. I'm heading the global telco division within Infobip, which is basically taking care of all the services that we are connecting to telcos like SMS voice, and among others also RCS. So RCS is our, let's say, next bet in this segment. So we would like to see how we can push this with the operators, with Google, and in the end with the clients.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mattia. And last but not least, the most important person in this panel, because without him, we wouldn't have this. Welcome, Etienne. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Giovanni. So I'm Etienne Dupont, based in Paris, so working at Viber and in charge of business messaging solutions. So what does it mean? So in charge of product strategies and also our global B2B marketing team at Viber.
Brilliant. Then let's start right with you, Etienne, because we don't want to jump into RCS right away. Viber has been around for quite some time. I would say Viber is a perfect example of a smart messaging solution. Maybe you can give us a bit of background how Viber actually developed, and on the P2P side as well as on the exciting A2P business side.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Viber actually is probably one of the pioneer OTT channel that have been offering rich communication solutions to brands when they want to reach out to their consumers. We have developed a range of tools the past 5 years to enable this one-to-one communications and one-to-one discussions between brands and users. One of the tools that has been developed like 5 years ago is what we call business message channels. It has been built as an alternative to SMS, actually. So we have been working with partners that are sitting here, like Infobip and Sitch, and their clients that wanted to reach out their consumers, not only just by SMS, but also on Vibers, and being capable to send their message, whatever it can be, promotion, but also transactions, and more recently have full conversations on Vibers. And more or less at the same period, also our team also have developed our bot API, working with both platforms, brands that want to leverage all our messaging capacities and want to scale the experience on Viber to the next level and turn their conversational channels to a true sales funnel. So we are working, for instance, with banks, with carrier that are going to open their channels or they bought on Viber, and where the clients are going to reach out to them for client support, or are going to connect to their bank directly on Viber to send money, to check their account saving, etc. So there are a lot of use cases that we have seen the past 5 years developed. Obviously, the pandemic started in 2020 has accelerated some trends that we were already experiencing. We have seen much more brands turning and accelerating their digital transformations and turning their communications not only by email or SMS, but also going into messaging platform. Our numbers, we have seen like a large increase the past 2 years. Like we have recorded last year, like more than 48% more conversations between business and consumers. We have seen more than 40% transactional message being sent on Viber. And now more than 5,000 brands have an active business messaging channel on Viber, whether it's a bot or a business message account.
So it's an operational reality, Viber for business.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, definitely. It's one of our key. It's one of our key offer. Business messaging solutions is completely sticking to what we are. I mean, we are messaging applications. We are enabling users to be in touch with their families, their friends. Why not being in touch at the same way with the brand they are buying or purchasing or whatever? And the idea is to offer the same level of features and services that what they can get with their friends and families.
Brilliant. So if I'm a brand and I want to communicate with consumers, I can use Viber. Check. Now let's move on to RCS. John, where are we with RCS? Maybe give us a bit of an overview on the MNO rollout and how the clients look like, Apple versus Android, just to frame the ecosystem of RCS, please.
Yeah, I'll give a minute or two of my opinion, and then steer with some questions by all means and add in. So I think the good, the bad, and the ugly. So on the general pace rollout of RCS, I think it's fair to say we've been in a bit of a classic trough of disillusionment, right? I think the last 12, 18 months on that traditional, we've had the hype curve and people got a bit fatigued and jaded. But I like to think we're coming out of that and we're beginning to get onto that mass adoption and normalization. We've certainly, I don't want to be too negative, during that trough, we've continued with our own campaigns in France, Germany, US, etc. So it's not a standstill. But having said all that, I do see the positives with the projections from the favorite analysts in the market, 700 million plus active users by the end of the year. By our own calculations, even today in the US, we see a reach list of around 25 million, or Canada around 6 million. So I think RCS is progressing, and just not as fast as we would all. And I believe one of the most public positive stances for RCS going forward is the recent announcement from the US carriers. All will go with a preloaded RCS with Google Messages client by default. So if that doesn't give a strong message out to the market, I don't know what does. So again, to be fair,
and Apple,
we were still
any news on Apple? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I can't speak on behalf of Apple, right? I would love to, and I'd love to give a scoop, but I think if anything doesn't change the mind or influence Apple, like the US carriers making that big leap, and with Samsung defaulting to the Messages client and supporting RCS, I think that as a general momentum if that doesn't sway and influence Google at some point, Apple at some point next year, I don't know what will, to be honest. There has to be a tipping point, but I'll leave that for them to decide. So nothing yet, but the number one argument we always get is reach. But I'd like to dispel that. Is that's our job and InfoBip's jobs. It's all the brethren in this industry to say, it's not Viber or RCS. It's what is the favorite channel in the given country, market, etc. It's our job to connect the user on their favorite channel to the brand. And RCS is growing in pockets around the world, and we just need to grow that and get the brand talking on those channels and just get the momentum and see the results.
Yeah. I'd like to pick up on these pockets around the world. Mattia, there's the poster child of RCS in terms of countries being Mexico. Can you shed some, what is different in Mexico, and what is happening there with RCS and RCS business messaging?
Well, in Mexico, from what we have seen is, first of all, there are some countries which are, let's say, more open to switch to some new technologies, and there are some countries that are more conservative, let's call it like that. I would say that Mexico is definitely open in that sense. That's first thing. Then the coverage is relatively good. I would say much better than in other countries where we operate, and that let's definitely influence the success of the different campaigns. And in the end, it's actually the campaign themselves, because we have seen some numbers. You can check this out on our webpage, actually. So where, we have done the same campaign through pure SMS, and then we have done the campaign through RCS. The difference in the conversion rate is humongous. It's really, really big difference, and that actually made a point to the clients, which said, okay, this actually makes sense. We will try to do this again. So that's why we have quite a few successful campaigns there, and many actually satisfied clients.
Brilliant. And I'd like to make it as hands-on as possible. If I'm a Mexican brand, is there a price list available for an RBM campaign, or is it free? What is the situation?
No, there is a price list, although I cannot say that prices are fixed, because, when we started with this, RCS was free of charge at that point of time. Then it actually, some price was put on the table. However, it's still not, I would say, completely clear. And that's the similar to, everywhere in the world. There are just a couple of, let's say, business messages provider, including Viber, where you actually have seen the clear price list, and what you can expect. But I believe that even that can be negotiated, if the volumes and the campaigns start to grow, because you need to understand that on this, not just on RCS side, but on any kind of business messaging side, modern one, smart one, you actually have to include also the data cost, because there is a data cost coming in. So there are some stuff that in SMS world was not, let's say, important. Now it is.
Okay, so pricing is still fluid in RCS land. I'd like to put the elephant into the room, which is Google Guest. Google has done a lot to increase the coverage and jump into the coverage gaps that some MNOs have left because they haven't introduced RCS early on. John, how is that mix now between Google Guest countries or Google Guest operated network operators or native MNO RCS services?
Yeah, I think it's no surprise when Google Guest was first announced in the market, everyone kind of sucked their teeth and raised eyebrows, kind of, is Google going to dominate and take over? But I would say that it's been an active dialogue between Cinch and all its competitors with Google and with the carriers. There's an ongoing debate all the time, and it's a healthy debate. So for us, in my opinion, Google Guest Cloud is actually a good thing to act as the catalyst to get the traffic starting to flow, even if it's 3 to 5 to 10%. Just seeing the engagement rates that Mattia talked about, that you can then compare that 90% RCS to the 10%, or the 90% SMS to the 10% RCS, just to show and demonstrate So Google Guest Cloud for us has been an awesome tool. We're still having the same sort of brand verification checks and balances. So there's no one running riot and doing rogue campaigns or anything like that. In fact, I say it's slightly more stringent. The one thing I would say is that, albeit as an advocate for Google Guest Cloud, we are absolutely clear that at the end of the day, A2P, brand verification, control, monetization, etc., should stay in the hands of the carrier. So as well as, as much as Google Guest Cloud acting as a catalyst, it has to end in the carrier's control at the end of the day. It's their clients, etc. So again, massive support of Google Guest Cloud. I think for those markets that hesitate, carriers that don't have the CapEx investment to go their own, it's a good way to start.
So would you call RCS an OTT service, or is it a carrier service? John?
It has to be carrier service. With all the regulatory control around intercept, etc., I think RCS should be a carrier telco controlled service. It can be made easier and simplified with Google's help in terms of some standardization. Certainly one of the pain points for us in deployments in the past has been on the client side, where you have different client types and form factors, and it becomes quite a pain to manage. So part of the Google benefit is that standardization of the client, that things look and feel and interact in the same way.
So same question to you, Mattia. Is RCS an OTT service or carrier service?
Yeah, it's unfortunately carrier service. Because that's the main reason why it's going so slow. I must congratulate the OTTs of the world, because they're really, grabbing the market very fast, and they're investing where they see the opportunity. Carrier market is very fragmented, I would say. You have thousands of carriers all around the globe, and each of them has their own idea how they should implement new services, not just RCS, any kind of services. And this is definitely something that, slows down the process. And when you try to, to talk with the global brands, and then you have, let's say, 100 operators that you need to cover, and out of those 100, 30 have RCS, 30 doesn't have, and 40 do not know what to do with RCS and how to invest. So then you actually have a problem. So that's why actually I would like to thank to Google because they are actually trying to do so. It's not an easy job for sure. I mean, we're also doing from our side whatever we can, but it is a process. It is a process, and in some cases, I think Google will help to start with the business, because this is what Google Guest Cloud does. In some of the other places, they can deploy their systems together with the operators, and some of the operators which we already work with, they have their own RCS systems and platforms, and they're enabled, but those are, I would say, quite rare cases. What is interesting, and this is something that I'm proposing to the carriers as well, is if they want actually to start with RCS, if they want to add, I mean, to grab the customers, to grab the market, they should start using RCS for their own services. Because many of the operators are also selling something to the clients. They're also communicating with their subscribers. So why would they use something other than RCS? I think this is something, as a start for them.
Eat your own dog food. That's always a good starting point.
Exactly.
So Etienne, now I'm very curious. How does Viber see RCS? Is that a threat, or what do you think about RCS?
If you want a very short answer, I would say no, because as John said, I mean, we are talking about RCS for now quite some time, quite a couple of years, and the development is very slow. And knowing that Viber's being a consumer app, we have the chance to react a bit more quicker than RCS, and discussing with thousands of carriers like Matthias mentioned. So we can initiate and be at the top of the innovations very quickly. RCS on our side, we are considering RCS, like, for a long answer, let's say, more as a challenge and as an opportunity. I mean, as a challenge because it's forcing us, Vibers, to stay, to be innovative, to keep releasing features that make sense for both business and users. It's forcing our team to stay motivating, to anticipate where the business is going, what kind of tools brands are looking for, and what kind of also type of communications users want to have. Because whatever the tools you are providing to brands, if the users are not ready to talk to the brands, it's useless in a way. And we are considering RCS also as an opportunity because the market is growing. The more partners, whatever it's a partner or competitor, educating the brands, the bigger the market will become. And today there's still a huge education work to be done with the brands to really show them why whatever RCS or OTT channels are a chance for them. It's not going to cost them just additional resources, but really make them understand that that is going to bring value for them in terms of consumer loyalty, in terms of additional sales they can get, and it's going to differentiate the type of conversation that they can get on a more regular basis with their consumers.
Great. It's a very interesting perspective to see RCS as kind of a roadmap initiative or gathering ideas from the RCS roadmap for Viber. Very nice perspective. Thank you, Etienne. Coming back to the topic of the panel, which is saying accelerating RCS. John, what needs to happen with RCS to really accelerate its deployment? Is it just waiting? Do we just need time to make it ubiquitous?
No. I think we've had enough of time, right? I think we've all want to see the success of it. Time is definitely not what we need. We just need to see some action. I think we need to see some strong markets demonstrate success. I am extremely hopeful for the likes of US and Canada, Mexico, Brazil, etc., where if we can get strong traction across carrier, and even get to that goal, sort of 100% reach on the Android base in those markets, and then start seeing that momentum as a RCS as a first choice for the Android base. I think that's what we need. I think for the rest of this year and 2022 is about if we can make 4 or 5 of the biggest markets a success, that's what we need. The danger is if we end up with 2 or 3, it becomes an MMS and it sits in the US and Australia or somewhere else. We really need this to be 4 or 5 markets and seeing some volume and traction.
Makes sense. So, Matej, what do we need to make 4 or 5 markets a big RBM success? Do the carriers need to fix the business models, or what is your view?
I mean, there are many things that we need to do, obviously. I first agree with John's opinion that yes, we need a couple of markets for that, and US is a big bet. I actually just recently had a conversation with some people here from US, and I was asking them, what is the most important business messaging product in their lives. I mean, if you go in some other spaces, there will be Viber, then in Korea you have Line, then in some other places you will have WhatsApp. RCS, unfortunately, is never there, but okay, I mean, they can grow. But you know what the answer for US was? Just SMS. The SMS is still there, and they don't have, I mean, anything that is more important to them than SMS. Obviously, as John mentioned, there is also MMS, which is pretty strong in US. And but I believe that this MMS can actually be a good starting point for RCS. because RCS is basically, let's say replacing MMS as a technology and not SMS. I think SMS will stay. SMS will stay for, let's say, as a simple product, and for some more smart, more rich things, we will probably use RCS or some other technology. But currently, they actually don't have anything other than that. So I would believe that RCS can be an option. Obviously, there is a problem that in US market there is a really high percentage of Apple phones, which is not so good for the RCS. But it's then up to the MNOs to integrate some clients when they are selling those phones. I guess this is the only way to do it for now. I mean, maybe Apple will change their mind in the next months or years. We'll see about that. And yes, I agree. But there are few big countries that have let's say slowly implemented the RCS. I think you mentioned the most. So it's we are talking about US, we are talking about Mexico, we are talking about Brazil. Germany is also pretty well covered. We have some business in France as well. Then there is India. So I believe that there are some countries which actually want to work on this product, and maybe now is the time to go back to the brands and tell them we have the connectivity for these particular markets. Let's see what we can do together.
Well, what about the first golden country, RCS golden country, which is Japan, which already in 2018 had all areas with RCS enabled. And interestingly, Japan is, I think, the country with the highest Apple penetration, and still through a branded app, RCS is a reality there. What do you hear from that country, John or Matthias? I don't know who. Please, Matthias.
Okay, I can continue to that one. Yeah. So on the Japan, it's also a very specific market. First, I'm not sure if you're aware, but they actually don't have a, let's say, SMS technology which is completely the same as everywhere else. So actually they are using something that is more similar to email. So their messages are already, let's say, relatively rich, definitely more rich than in the rest of the world. So that's why they are not using the proper SMS. That's one thing. And second, that's why they wanted to push this RCS technology, and they managed to do so. However, what they did is that they enabled P2P communication on RCS, but this business communication was not enabled for a long time, and it was just done relatively recent. We actually had a couple of campaigns there with local enterprise clients from Japan, and the result is similar to some other countries in a sense of conversion rate. However, let's say the coverage is still not there. I mean, we still don't have a proper coverage as we would like to have. And I'm not sure how this is going to be changed, because they did provide the app for the iPhones, but obviously you are getting this app maybe only when you buy a new phone. If you have an old phone, it takes some time, to get the reachability. Let's call it like that.
Yeah, I've got nothing more to add.
Since John, anything?
Matthias? No, nothing more to add. Similar story to Matthias in that what we've seen is adoption coverage so low that no international brands are interested in coming in to terminate in. We've seen one or two domestic brands, local services, but nothing at scale that what was the promise of the golden market to grow because of a plethora of things in the ecosystem, as Matthias said.
Perfect. So let's see how the different countries evolve. I'm super curious about that. But maybe the future is not just one-sided. It's not just Viber. Sorry, Etienne. It's certainly not just RCS. I think it will be like the famous word of omnichannel reality, because in the end, the consumer has its preference. So one consumer wants to continue and receive SMS, like in the US, as you said. Some will have Viber as their dominant app, like specifically in the CIS region of this world, but other geographies as well. And then you have WhatsApp in any geography. So as a brand, I might want to have actually not one channel, but all of them. And so the question is, how can the brands be supported in that desire? And Etienne, is that even in your interest for the brands to use multiple channels, or do you try to lure them into Viber only?
I mean, not at the brand, but let's as a users, probably you already experienced case where you're explaining one issue to a brand, and you are talking to one agent, moving back to a second agent, and moving back to a third agent, and you have to tell your story 3 or 4 times, okay? And I'm a big believer that in the futures, let's say you start your discussions on Vibers, for some reason you switch app, but you, like with a set of tools that what brands and partners like Infobip or Cinch can offer, basically users will receive the refunds on the app they are. Their users tend to switch from one app to another now relatively flexibly, with high flexibility. Sorry, so they tend, to use multiple channels. But with a true omnichannel solutions, brands will be able to read their message and replies where they are at the moment. They are without losing a lot of information between channels. So for Vibers, obviously. Countries where we have the highest market penetrations, like you say in CIS regions, but also in CE, in a couple APAC regions, Vibers will be is a dominant players, where we are already recording a large part of our conversations, and which we believe that we make the most to work in these directions. In markets where we are still we have lower market penetration, we can still be a channel that, for some reasons, users prefer to have business message communications. So at the end of the day, it will be the decisions of the users, because there will be a kind of alignment of tools across the board to reach out to the brands.
That sounds great. So let's do a reality check, John, on Omnichannel. How real is this today? What support does, for example, Cinch give to a brand to really enable an omnichannel experience?
Yeah, I'll try and answer that without a sales pitch, but it's in fear of oversharing, I'd say, for example, RCS adoption, where we've seen successful RCS campaigns, it's where Cinch controls the value chain from creating the content, executing the content, and through all the API layer, etc. below. So whenever we ask a brand and just give an API or service and say, execute, we have 10 channels, 20 channels here for you, it's the brand that has the capacity problem of how do I design content for each of those channels and understand the logic and etc. So where we don't control the application and content layer, our job as Cinch, that's where we created our Conversations API. To Etienne's point, it's giving enough fidelity to make sure you maximize the benefit of all the channels underneath without losing the fidelity in terms of, say, list messages in one channel, carousels in one channel, read, response, displayed rates in another channel that might be different across the board. So we try to give the highest fidelity and then normalize that communication back to our partners and brands. So that's our answer to try to say that, is to look, all these channels are here. The markets that Etienne provided, they're the dominant, Viber's dominant. You want to use that for X market, so use this same API versus WhatsApp for Brazil or for India, and they use the same API. That's been our response to the market, and we say we'll make sure the content arrives and it's all compliant, etc. It's the only way we see it being successful, and so far it's resonating.
Martin, maybe you can explain. Thank you, John. Maybe you can explain more concretely what use cases do you see resonate with a real omnichannel and user experience?
Well, obviously there are some promotional use cases which, to be completely honest, are the most successful in our current business portfolio, for the reason because those are rich messages which are coming to the end subscribers, and they react and convert much more than, let's say, on the pure text message. However, what we see as a future of this kind of technology is conversational messaging. Anything that, you know, when your subscriber, when your user needs to talk with the brand, they will initiate the conversation or vice versa. But this conversation will be rich. It will add more things to the actual conversation, like, you know, pictures, videos, I don't know, something else, something other than that, which I cannot envision. For example, we had and for that is RCS really good. We had some promotional campaign where we had carousels of the cars, so you can actually you know, browse to the cars, and you can choose the car you want to, let's say, buy, and then you will get some explanations and stuff, maybe some videos. So all these things, all this interaction that needs to happen is basically based on the rich channels. If we just, you know, go through simple SMS, we will not have that. So the best approach would be actually, as actually John mentioned as well, is, you know, to use the brands on the features. To use the OTTs on the features where they're actually the strongest. So not all the OTTs have the same features for delivering the messages. So you can actually, you know, depending on the type of the client, you can actually, you know, integrate those features. And of course, the coverage is also, of course, very important. So in certain markets, you will use Viber. In certain markets, you will not. You will use, I don't know, Facebook Messenger or let's say WhatsApp. So that depends. But if you have similar coverage, then definitely it's up to the features, and of course up to the end clients, because you all know that, you know, on your own phones you have 3, 4, 5 different messaging clients, and it's normal. So everybody's using different apps. So it's up to the client actually to decide through which channel they will communicate, and that's actually the strength of the Omnichannel. This is how the Omnichannel actually should look like.
Sounds great. I'm very much looking forward to this brave new world. There are no questions from the audience so far. Please, if you have one, shoot it out. But I'd like to start summarizing what I've heard. It started off with impressive numbers, growth numbers from Viber, 40+% in growth in transactional messages, 5,000 brands using Viber for business on a regular basis. Then we heard about the RCS trough and the expectation that we are leaving that trough and shooting for 4 to 5 big markets to show the success of RCS. One key metric for me, however, would be when is smart messaging, which could be RCS, could be Viber, could be any OTT, when will it actually overtake A2P SMS in terms of traffic numbers, or at least revenue numbers? What is your prediction, Etienne?
I mean, I don't. I mean, SMS won't die. I mean, obviously, if you compare SMS to other rich communications solutions, SMS seems outdated and a bit overpassed feature-wise, but there are many regions in the world where internet connections has a low penetrations. There's a lot of regions in the world where people can't afford to buy a smartphone and are still using like a feature phone, let's say, which means that SMS will always be there, but the trend of brands moving to OTTs, to RCS, maybe one day will grow. There is still a huge gap today between where users are having daily interactions, and today a messaging app is representing more than 60% of their daily interactions, and the tools that brands are using today. I mean, they are still mainly on emails, SMS, a bit of social media to manage some one-to-one conversations, and they progressively turn to to more messaging, OTT, RCS channels. So the growth on messagings will still happen. I think we are more at the beginning of the journey than being in let's say more stable situations. And probably at some point, SMS will be overtake either by volume or revenue-wise by message channel, but we're not there. I mean, it will take still a few more years before it happens.
Okay, a few more years.
Just
Mattia, John?
To comment. Oh, sorry to just jump in, but just anecdotally, I was talking to Oscar, our CEO, this morning, and he was laughing and joking that back in 2002, people were predicting the demise of SMS, and look what's happened, right? And the CPaaS market is just exploding. The fact that we're all consumers on this call and have been sat on conference calls or call centers forever, and you have that sickness when you're in this messaging market as to why the hell can't you just do two-way messaging, either SMS, Viber, or whatever it is. You just see the use cases everywhere. And I think just by virtue of that, there is room for all these conversational messaging channels and use cases to be adopted almost everywhere. So that I don't see, back to your question, when will conversational or smart messaging overtake SMS? I think the growth path for everything is just so big and the use cases are so big, especially with 10 DLC in the US. I think we will just keep on going in a parallel track for quite some time before we see the OTT channels overtaking.
Okay, so that's a very conservative view. Now I'm curious, Mattia, do you see in 2 years' time smart messaging taking over?
It seems that Infobip and Sinch have similar aspect on the world and of messaging, because yes, I actually agree with John, and I do believe that what we are creating with smart messaging, with rich messaging, we actually creating new use cases. So we are adding new use cases to the current one. I haven't seen people using Viber as a channel or WhatsApp as a channel, even RCS as a channel, for exactly the same use cases as they do for SMS. So they are not replacing it. Mm-hmm. It's just additional thing. And for example, if you are, I don't know, if you're getting some delivery, you don't need to have, bells and whistles and videos and everything that you are getting on delivery. You will get a text message that your delivery is there, or it will be there in like 2 hours. So that's what you need, and I think this will not be replaced. On the other hand, there are many different use cases that are not being even used, and as John mentioned, you see those use cases everywhere. When you are communicating, when you are a user, you are actually getting those information, and why this is not already there, why I need to do it this way, because I'm mostly talking about IVR. I hate IVRs, and you can do much more through normal, conversational messaging than on any given IVR. And there are IVRs of the world, tons of them. And everybody of us are using, I would say, a good chunk of their life on those IVRs.
All right. I was hoping to get a real number out of you. So just in a year's time or 2 years' time to point you to that recorded prediction. But fair enough. I understand your points.
I think 2 years' time is too short from my perspective. Really. Mm-hmm. It will not happen in 2 years.
Enough. It will take much more time. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Sounds great. So SMS still has a life, and smart messaging coming on top, adding new use cases and creating new traffic streams. I think that's a great summary of this session, and I'd like to hand over back to Sophia.
Thank you very much to all of the speakers for a really fascinating discussion. This session will now be available for on-demand viewing through the Swapcard platform for 30 days post-event. I would now once again like to thank Rakuten Viber and all of the speakers we've just heard from. You can join us next at 4 p.m. Eastern Time for our final session of the day, Where are the New Data Hubs? Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you there.